Coming up here on the Raiders Report, we're going to get into the Cliff Notes version of everything that Pete Carroll and John Spytek said today at the intro press conference. I'll tell you this, it fired me up. I wanted to hear Pete Carroll. I wanted to hear John Spytek. A lot of the things that they said was the right mindset. Whoever the dude that screamed Raiders, my cousin Andrew texted me and he goes, "Were you that crazy dude that yelled Raiders in the background?" I promise you, it was not me, but you got to love Pete. He had a good answer to it. He's quick-witted. He looks great for 73 years old. If you're always looking for Raiders news and rumors, make sure you click that subscribe button. Make sure those notifications are turned on. My promise is this. When the silver and black do something, we're going to let you know about it. Maybe Pete's been using Panda supps because he looks good, dude, for 73. And if y'all want to get your hands on some of the best workout supplements on the market, use code Pete at pandasupps.com for 25% off, whether it's the protein, whether it's a fat burner, some BCAAs. Got a whole bunch of products that we'll talk about here in just a moment. So the way that I'm going to do this is this. I'm going to start with Pete Carroll, and then I'm going to go to everything that I thought around Spytek, just because Carroll was the one that got majority of the questions, and I also love that Pete wasn't afraid to kind of act like a dad throughout that press conference, where if somebody didn't raise their hand to give the question, he was like, "Can you please raise your hand? I'm trying to see what you're doing." So let's go to the first thing that I love that Carroll said. He said that he understands the Spytek relationship, where he understands what their job is in place. And one of my biggest fears when the Raiders brought in Josh McDaniels, one of the reasons why I didn't love the idea of bringing back John Gruden was because at the end of the day, it was Gruden's decision. At the end of the day, it was Josh McDaniels' decision. And we have ran organizations like that in the past, and it simply hasn't worked out. When you bring in somebody like Carroll that has his thought processes, and then you bring in somebody like Spytek that thinks the way that he does, they made it very clear to me that they are going to be a great team. And this is an organization that needs a great team from the top down to the bottom. Next thing that Carroll really talked about was just how valuable having somebody like Tom Brady is. And when you have a leader like Tom Brady, everybody in that organization, again, from the front office to the players, they respect that guy. And when you have somebody that is just thinking on that type of level where, you know, we're talking about athletes on the Kobe Bryant train, the Michael Jordan train, Tom Brady train, and the fact that we're going up against somebody like Patrick Mahomes, when you have somebody like Brady, it's a huge advantage to you. Let's go to another thing that I love that Pete Carroll said. It's not a rebuild. This is going to be a team that they're going to go out there, they're going to try to win right away. He did say that usually that can take 2 to 3 years, which is why I'm telling you right now, Carroll's going to be the Raiders head coach for the next 3 seasons guaranteed. But he also used the word competitive. And the way that they're going to build a roster is they're going to want to go out there and compete. Compete is a word that is going to be, I think that word we keep bringing up, because for the Raiders to put out on social media, compete, and put P-E-T in bold, it seems to be a word that he's thrown out there a lot. He wants to build around a quarterback is what he said. And, you know, nobody really asked the QB question, and I get it. He probably can't really give that answer, but he did make it known, and he made it very clear that in order to win in the National Football League, you need to have a quarterback. Pete understands that. Pete also said that he's done a good job at being able to find QBs that not a lot of other people thought. When I listened to the way Pete Carroll talked about it, it made it sound like to me that it's not going to be Aiden O'Connell, that they're going to be able to look in because of Spytek's experience, because of Tom Brady, because of his own experience, that there's going to be a new quarterback in Las Vegas. So here's going to be the pinned comment on today's show. Who's going to be the Raiders quarterback next season? If you were a betting man, who are you putting your chips on the table for? My answer is going to be coming up after this YouTube ad break. If we're making guesses, then let's make an educated guess on Russell Wilson. And I only say that because of the amount of rumors, the amount of speculation that has already been floated out there around Carroll, and also the way that Tom Brady thinks in terms of how to build a quarterback. He wants to have somebody maybe sit behind for a year or two, develop, and having a cornball like Russell, who is a book nerd, and you combine that with Tom Brady, yeah, you're looking at a bridge quarterback, but look at a bridge quarterback that's the best bridge to help us get to the ultimate goal, which is a Super Bowl down the road. Let's go to something else that Pete said, that they're going to be a team that wants to run the football and that they're going to be playing great defense, where, well, you know, we sit back and we look at, all right, how's this team going to be built? Spytek is somebody that wants to build in the trenches. For Pete Carroll to say that those are going to be the qualities that they rely on, that also makes sense of why they wanted to bring in Carroll. When you first look at all the reports around Mike Vrabel, they're kind of similar style of head coaches. So that means watch for the Raiders to build the O-line, watch for the Raiders to upgrade at the running back spot, and that they're really going to rely on that defense. When you bring up all of these things and what Pete said, again, it makes me think that they're going to go bridge QB, maybe a Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, Geno Smith is another name, but this is how this team's going to win. In the trenches, playing good defense, running the football, taking care of it. Pete wanted to return, and a lot of times people ask, like, you're 73, you won a Super Bowl, you won a natty, why would you want to come back? He wanted to come back, and you could tell from listening to that press conference, Pete was itching. He was excited. I don't know how much Panda supps caffeine he had before that thing started, but you could tell he was amped, and he seemed like a kid in a candy store. I want a head coach that at 73 years old, that's accomplished everything that there is to accomplish, still has that itch, that fire, that competitive nature to get back out there, because when you combine that with guys like Max Crosby, guys like Tom Brady, it can be a very, very contagious thing. Let's go to this. He's going to stick to his philosophy. He's built a lot of very successful teams. You go back, you look at what he did at USC. Go back and look at what he did at the Seattle Seahawks. They built a culture, and he has basically stuck to his philosophy of, if you're not having fun, you're not going to want to come to work every day. They're going to be disciplined. They're going to have each other's backs, but they're going to have fun doing it. And again, you saw Pete Carroll, how much fun he had. John Spytek said he was killing the interview. Pete Carroll did kill that interview. I was waiting if he was going to throw out a Raiders. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of happy that he didn't throw out a Raiders, but you could tell that he was excited and he's going to stick to his game plan. He also then talked about teaching everybody, staff and the players included. When you go back to the video that I made on Jed Hughes has a quote around the importance of building people inside of your organization, because it's not going to be quick success, but you got to build it on the inside and do it the right way. John Spytek also talked about their thought process on players, on how it's also important to build from within, reward those players that you draft with new contracts, because you know exactly what you're going to get. That, to me, is the logic of how the Raiders are going to build this team. Then, he just seems like a kid that loved ball, and they kept talking about loving ball. He kept talking about going out there and throwing the football. I love the energy that Pete Carroll brings, because Pete Carroll brings that good dad, good grandfather energy, where everybody knows that role model that maybe you had in your life that was a tough dude, and you know for a fact was a tough guy. My grandfather is my superhero, right? That guy could wear a cape, and there's nothing wrong that he could do. But, man, I knew he loved me from the end of the world and back, but he was also a tough guy when he needed to be. And Pete Carroll kind of gives me those vibes like a kid in a candy store that can't wait to get out there. And then, last thing, and this is still kind of what I've mentioned a few times, they're going to leave split decisions up to Spytek, and they're going to leave it up to Pete Carroll. They will make legit, honest efforts. So when you go back and look at your past struggles, you got to talk about QB, but we could talk about, Dave Ziegler wanted C.J. Stroud. Josh McDaniels said no. You go back and you look at a lot of the other picks in the first round, if certain guys could have gone here, decided that maybe this was smart, maybe this wasn't. If you want to build something right, you need it where everybody is on the same page. And right now it seems like John Spytek, Pete Carroll, and Tom Brady are all on the same page. Coming up here, my quick notes on what I thought about what John Spytek, the Raiders GM, had to say during his intro press conference. Before we get into that, though, I got to show some love to our sponsor, Panda supps, man. Use code Pete, P-E-T-E, for 25% off at pandasupps.com. We got some brand new flavors, got some brand new products that I want to be able to tell you about. I always talk about nootropics. If you're a gamer, if you're a student, maybe you're taking one of Pete's classes. If you need something to focus, but you don't want that crash from caffeine, try the nootropics out. It's their brand new one. Also, what they have, which I got to get my hands on, their Burn Max. I love using their thermogenics in the past, which it can help your strength, energy, focus, and most importantly, it's going to help your fat loss goals, which is something that I'm trying to do, getting in shape for my wedding. Also, I always get asked, like, Mitch, how do you bounce back after doing a crazy show? Like, we were live doing Bills-Chiefs just about 12 hours ago, and I was pretty banged up. I'm not going to lie to you. But you got to get into a good routine. One of the things that I do in the morning is I will take my greens, because I know a lot of times people don't have the time maybe to eat as healthy as what they need to. So what do? I wake up, get my greens in me, kind of cleans it out, right? Like it's like an oil change in a person. If you oil change your car, you need to do it as well. Pandasupps.com. And if anybody's got a sweet tooth, they have the best protein that I've ever had, and I'm not even kidding when I say that. Code Pete, 25% off at pandasupps.com. So let's get into what John Spytek had to say. And again, there was a lot of different things that I think both of these guys said, and I'm going to reiterate some of the stuff. Most of the questions were directed towards Carroll, which I expected. For me, the first thing that he did was you could tell how grateful for the opportunity he was. He was grateful from everybody, from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, from the people that gave him his first job, and, like back from Philadelphia. Talked about Jason Licht, the general manager of Tampa Bay, and he's going through and he's mentioning all these people of how how appreciative he is. And you could tell that he's worked also underneath some very impressive regimes. But sometimes you need to have somebody that's grateful, that understands how great of an opportunity it is to be a GM. But also, he said he's always wanted to work for a great organization like the Raiders. I'll say this, and maybe this is kind of a lame note, but the entire time Spytek talked, this was important to me, that he just seemed like an overall great dude, right? Like somebody that you want to go out and grab beers with, somebody that you want to golf with. Spytek, if you ever watch this, if you ever want to go play pickleball at the Summit, which I think you'll probably know where that is. I got a partner for you. I would love to be able to connect you guys. He would love to be able to play pickleball against you. But, he just sounded like a great dude. Talked about his wife and how they're going to be an awesome community. Sometimes you need, though, to have that stability at home, and you need to have that awesome person in your corner where, I got Alex, she's amazing. Chugs has got Danny, and you need to have those people in your corner to be able to put in, the work that you're going to do, right? Like, that's just part of the equation. But did seem like an overall great guy that would be a great pairing with Pete Carroll. Once a leader like Tom Brady was talking about, Baker Mayfield, but talked about kind of when he was able to bring Brady over. And when you have players that have that mindset, and, again, it wasn't like we got to find a player as talented as Tom Brady. It was about finding a player that's got that sicko mentality of I always try to get that 1% better. And if you're looking at a quarterback that I think has that Brady mentality, whether you like it or not, to me, I think it's Russell Wilson. And the amount of reports that came out around Russ, and when you heard the statements that were made today, they didn't want to give away too much information. But I was just hearing certain things and connecting certain dots. One of the things that he said that I absolutely loved was, our character will be our fate. At the end of the day, he was like, if you don't love football, you're not going to play football on this team. And for a player like Max Crosby, he's got to love hearing that, because I think even for a lot of Raiders fans out there, we've fallen into traps of that guy's a phenomenal athlete. That guy's super, super fast. This guy can do that. But you also go, does he love football? And when you go back and you look at a lot of the players that the Raiders brought in, Chris Wilkins loves football. Robert Spillane loves football. And they want guys that just want to be there, that are football type of dudes. And when you add guys that love football, because here's the thing, everybody's talented, right? Everybody's talented. And one of the things that I love that Spytek's had a lot of success with throughout his career is being a part of regimes where they find these guys in college. And these are players that are having long, successful NFL careers. But I think a lot of times when you find somebody that is super gifted, but also can put in that extra percentage and can go above and beyond, that is a culture builder. And when you add those type of players with somebody like a Max Crosby, knowing who your building block guys are, JPJ, Brock Bowers, Tom Brady, Pete Carroll, John Spytek, those are the building blocks of what truly, truly great teams are made of. I'll tell you this, I was really excited to hear what Pete Carroll and John Spytek had to say. Very, very happy Raider fan right here. So one more thing that I want to get into, it is the news that happened today. Maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't. I put out a short earlier today, and it was around the Raiders, and they went and requested to interview Karl Scott. And I don't know if this is going to be like a DC interview. I would imagine that it is, because it technically wasn't clarified if it was DC interview or not. It was just said that the Raiders have requested to interview Karl Scott. So here's what I know. They requested to interview him today, January 27th. He worked with Pete Carroll back in 2022 and in 2023. He's got Nick Saban ties, was on Texas staff in 2016 with Patrick Mahomes. But my favorite thing about Karl Scott is this note right here. He was the only staffer from the Pete Carroll regime that Mike McDonald, so when Carroll left, Mike McDonald took over. The only person that McDonald retained on that entire staff was Karl Scott. And I said this earlier when we were live. The way that our Seahawks guys talked about Scott, who's 39 years old, reminded me a lot of the way that I think Raider Nation talks about Rob Leonard, where people outside of the nation might not know the name Leonard and how much weight that name truly carries, because he's a well-respected coach. So the fact that Scott was also being talked about in that same regard, I know it's maybe a name that a lot of people haven't heard about, But based on the way that it was communicated to me, if you respect a name like Rob Leonard, all I'm going to say is this, that I think that you should respect a name like Scott as well, because it sounds like somebody that's got Pete Carroll ties, somebody that comes from a good coaching tree, and somebody that's very well respected in NFL circles. Reminder, if you want to hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. We will be making videos anytime Raiders information is out there. If you do not watch this video live, it's all good. We will be live tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, like we do every single Tuesday here on the Raiders Report.